This is examples in music for Objective 2.1 and the next few objectives. Objective 2.1 says explain the whole step-half-step pattern of natural minor scale and correctly notate the natural minor scales ascending and descending starting on any pitch. From the learning resources, you should now be familiar with the minor scale whole step-half-step pattern, and here's an example of that in action in a real piece. This is the Beethoven Piano Concerto number 3. Alright, here we have the piano solo part, and this two-measure passage shows an example of the C minor scale. As we see from our key signature, we have 3 flats, B, E, and A. And starting on E flat and going through a series of arpeggiated figures, we work our way down the C minor scale all the way down to C. I'll play this section for us, we'll see this figure happen, then we'll also see some accidentals come into play, and we'll talk about those on later objectives. Objective 2.2 says, identify and notate minor key signatures on staves of treble, bass, alto, and tenor clefs. Here we have the Bach Toccata and Fugue, and it happens to be in D minor. Our key signature has 1 flat, which is the key signature of D minor. Here we have the Beethoven Moonlight Sonata. It is in a minor key. We have 4 sharps in the key signature. Our minor key signatures indicate that that is in C sharp minor. This is a movement from the Mozart Requiem. It is in a minor key. 1 flat in the key signature indicates that this is in D minor. Objective 2.3 says identify parallel major and minor keys and identify relative major and minor keys. In this piano concerto by Beethoven, we do have a minor key. If we looked at the key signature and we know that 3 flats for a major key is the key of E flat major and C minor are relative keys. The parallel key to C minor is C major, which has a different key signature. This piano piece by Beethoven, it's in a minor key. There are no sharps and no flats in the key signature. In terms of major key signatures, that's the C major key signature. The relative minor to C major is A minor. The parallel to A minor is A major, which would have a different key signature. This is the Symphony No. 5 by Beethoven. With 3 flats in the key signature, this happens to be a minor key. The major key indicated would have been E flat major. The relative of E flat major is C minor. This is in C minor, and the parallel to C minor would be C major, which is a different key signature. Let's group the next few objectives together. This passage of the Beethoven Piano Concerto shows all of them very well. Objective 2.4 says, correctly notate the harmonic minor and melodic minor scales ascending and descending starting on any pitch. What you should have seen from the learning resources is that in the harmonic minor scale and the melodic minor scale, the 6th and 7th scale degrees are altered, in this case raised, compared to the natural minor scale. For harmonic minor scales, both ascending and descending, you raise the 7th scale degree. For melodic minor scales, you raise the 6th and 7th degree in the ascending form, but lower them back down to the natural form on the descending form. In music pieces that are in a minor key, we see the 6th and the 7th degree raised, and here's a great example of that. This is the opening passage of the piano solo. So it starts on C, and then it goes up the scale, raises the 6th and 7th scale degrees, which are A and B, and then it does it again in the octave higher. Objective 2.5 says identify pitch letter names of the minor scales given their scale degree names. The scale degree names shown here would be tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, Since this one is raised, we'd call it the raised submediant. If it was A flat, we'd call it just the submediant. Since this is raised, we'd call it the leading tone, just like the major key. If this was the B flat, it would be called the subtonic. Objective 2.6 says identify all chromatic variations of solfege syllables, and objective 2.7 says label the scale degrees of minor scales with movable do solfege syllables. So in this piece, this would be do, re, me instead of me, fa, so. Since this is raised, it's still la and raised, ti, do. But if this was lowered back down to the key signature, A flat would be lay, and B flat would be te, do. Check out the learning resources for the other chromatic variations to the solfege syllables. So watch and listen to this piece and notice how many raised 6th and 7th scale degrees we see, how many A naturals and B naturals end up appearing as we go along. Objective 2.8 says identify the minor key of a melody or simple piece of music by using the key signature and other notation clues. Here's a piece by Mozart, and it has 1 flat in the key signature. From that, our major or minor key options would be F major or D minor. Let's look at the soprano voice line, and we see that it starts on D, which would be a clue for D minor. And the other thing with minor keys is we're going to look for those raised 6th or 7th scale degrees. In this case, the 7th scale degree would be C, so we'd expect to see some C sharps as the leading tone of D minor. If we go forward some, it doesn't take us too long to find one. Here's the Bach Toccata and Fugue, also in D minor. Again, we're looking for phrases that center around D. This one starts on A, which is the dominant of D minor, and the dominant note is often the second most featured note other than the tonic. The tonic comes into play here and here on the phrase endings, which is indicating D minor, and we see raised 7th scale degree C sharp, which is the leading tone of D minor. This is the Moonlight Sonata in C sharp minor. We see from the left hand that the C sharp comes into play right from the beginning, and the 7th scale degree is B, and we expect to see some B sharps, which we have one coming up here in the 4th measure.